Oh no, we were
Make your reservation for next year.
He built
It's
it
the only
in the
time.
late 80s, 20-some years ago.
It's not.
My husband painted and wallpapered. Not this one, but the original.
It's awesome.
Isn't there another mikveh here that's part of like Temple Shalom?
Yeah,
or
we
something?
have.
It's in Temple Shalom?
Yeah, by Bambino's restaurant or
Right,
someplace
yeah.
around there. That's what I
I want you to ask any question you always wanted to ask. Hold on.
What?
First of all, welcome. This is a mikveh, as you can see. A mikveh, I'm not going to go into elaboration now because we have our guest speaker, Mrs. Zaleski, who's kindly come down from Denver. She's a pioneer of the Jewish community over there. She was a pioneer of the Jewish community here in Colorado Springs. And she continues her heart to spread her wings all over Colorado. There's one home in Greenwood Village that virtually never locks its doors at night. The Leslie family, it's always open. A mikveh is a central point to Judaism, and I'm going to give you a rhetorical question, which you know the answer already to. What's the most important facet, an object, an article in Jewish life? You guessed it right.
You said Torah.
You said Torah. Any other guesses?
But the mikveh, you have to build a mikveh before you even get a Torah for your shul.
Correct. If you have money, but you don't have enough for both a Torah and mikveh, mikveh is number one. This is in all the response of all the rabbis.
Cemeteries come in that?
No, we talk about live
I
things.
know.
We talk about live things. A cemetery, a person can get buried anywhere in the world, as long as it's a Jewish burial, in Jewish respect. A mikveh is such a central point to Judaism that, as we said, if a person is in a town and they have located funds, the first thing before they even build a synagogue, you know the joke, 2 Jews on desert island, 3 synagogogues? No, 3 mikvahs. No, 1 mikveh. The first thing is a mikveh, and it takes precedence over any other article in Judaism. There was a famous halachic authority, the Chazan Ish in Bnei Barak, who was once asked in the early 40s about somebody in Israel who was locating funds or was out of Israel, and he said, "What is your question? How dare you doubt and put off mikveh building for one moment? Do quickly," and that's number one. So wherever you go in the world, thanks to a website called mikveh.org, there is a directory of any mikveh in the world. There are mikvehs being built in, take a guess.
Vietnam.
Vietnam, that's correct. That is correct, they're building a mikveh in Vietnam. This morning I just saw pictures on one of the Chabad websites where they just broke ground yesterday for the New Delhi mikveh in India. Not Mumbai, everybody knows Mumbai. They already have a mikveh. In New Delhi they broke ground today and yesterday they were just pouring the cement. Mikvehs are sprouting all over the world. But what's amazing about a mikveh is that it always has the watchful eye of an expert Orthodox rabbi. No, it's not him. An expert Orthodox rabbi who oversees the mikveh, every detail. And for example, in our mikveh, just like a kosher butcher has to have a supervision, a kosher food, anything you put in your mouth has to have a kosher supervision. How much more so something so central in Judaism has to have a supervision. This is the supervision letter. Rabbi Yumi Katz in Lakewood in New York oversees every detail of this mikveh. He even designed the nitty-gritty lights and positioning on jacuzzis. So he wasn't just involved in the spiritual, what you think, he was involved in the day-to-day, perfect parts of the mikveh. Mikvehs date back over 3,000 years. And I'm not going to give you a history now, but I just will tell you that they just discovered this week in Baltimore the oldest mikveh in the United States from 1826. They just unraveled it this week. Check it out on the web, it's an amazing find. The Jewish community in Baltimore is raving about it. That the oldest mikveh they found is in Baltimore. But what makes a mikveh unique is that wherever you are in the world, however the external and the beauty and blah 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 looks like, what's most important is what goes on over there. And Jews have been using mikveh since we got the Torah at Mount Sinai. Before we got the Torah, we all converted. And one of the parts of conversion is to immerse in a mikveh. And of course, the most important part in conversion is to accept the entire Torah and its authority. Everything in Torah, one small print, fine line, is as godly as the big bold letters. So everything has to be accepted in entirety. And this is what brings us to mikveh. Most important of all, the mikveh is a special thing that belongs to the Jewish woman, and Mrs. Zaleski will tell us more about it. We'll now proceed to the preparation room. This is a room where, I don't want to steal her speech, she's worked so hard, but it's something that has to be done before mikveh. Mr. Lesky will later on give us a rundown, but we'll just see the external part.
Welcome to the outside.
It's okay, I'll go. You're used to it.
And the scent
Is this your mikvah? You come here? You have one in your house?
Today in Colorado there are 5 mikvahs. 5 mikvahs.
In all of Colorado?
You may ask the question, what can go wrong in a mikvah? You just build it and it's perfect. Why do you need this constant supervision of an Orthodox rabbi who's certified and observes the law and follows the law and instructs us in the law? Because a mikvah, as we said, is so central to Judaism. There are a lot of things that can go wrong with leaks and other stuff which can invalidate a mikvah. So it's really, really detailed. There are only a few expert rabbis in America that do mikvah. I personally actually like mikvah. So when I was in yeshiva, just after I got married, I continued taking one of my tests on the laws of mikvah, which was about 4 months of work. But of course, when I came to the practicality and I saw so many different things which have no comparison to when I was learning in the book. Come in over here. We said there are 5 mikvahs today in Colorado, which are under supervision of an Orthodox rabbi.
3, 4.
There's Aish in southeast Denver, the East Denver mikvah, the West Side mikvah, and then there's the Boulder mikvah. And there's a mikvah here, so there are 5 mikvahs over here. This is a jet shower spray from Schmanzi. Rain shower. Necessary into the preparation for the mikvah. So this is called the preparation room. And we're very blessed that a lot of detail went into this mikvah. Like the marble tile, the heated floors. This was built by a local Jewish lady in town, an Israeli. I'm not sure if she lives here still. Sheena hasn't built this, that little thing over there. Handiwork. There's certain things you cannot buy in a store, you know. You can get everything, but certain things you have to make by hand. Any questions about a mikveh? Just the background, not the detail, Mr. Leslie, just history of a mikveh. All fine, all good? No questions? Okay.
This is it. Did we lose Gloria? I told you.
This is the actual mikveh itself, and what makes a mikveh kosher is a certain amount of rainwater that enters naturally into the mikveh. When we say naturally, it means there's no force of hand. We don't pour it into the mikveh. We let it flow naturally from the sky. Now, there are several kinds of mikvahs that the Torah tells us can be used. Generally, there are 2. There is the ma'ayan, a live spring, and a mikveh, which means an assembly of water. The difference between a ma'ayan and a mikveh is a ma'ayan's water is gushing. It's a live spring. And therefore, Torah says it can gush and flow. A mikveh, as opposed to that, must be assembled, gathered, still water. So before we get to that phase, we also have to focus on how we enter the water into the mikveh from the sky. So the rain starts. Before we do that, we take out our prayer books and we start praying for rain. In fact, the mikveh in Denver, Mr. Leslie can attest to, that was in August of 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we were filling up the water. And you remember, it rained, I've lived here 10 years, I think it rained just over 6 inches of rain in 1 or 2 days. 2 days. And that's when the Denver H mikveh was filled up. Hashem does listen to us. When the water came through on the roof, ours took longer to fill because we started a little later. It trickled its way through on a trough, on a gutter. But the gutter, Jewish law says, has to be a gutter that is not metal. So we cannot use our regular metal gutters that we build the house with. So we chopped those gutters down and we started a plastic gutter that would lead the water in, because plastic hasn't got a status of vessel. As the water came in, it would gush down a whole system of plastic pipes, not complete ones, and they would trickle down over here.